All right, so we're looking at section 3.1, which is solving equations, solving quadratics. And the solving quadratics by graphing and algebraically. Okay. And what we're talking about the solving is we're finding the solutions, which is the same word as roots and zeros and x-intercepts. So where the graph crosses the x-axis. And in class, we discussed that if we have this, that we could be a parabola and sit right on the x-axis. We could pass through it twice on the x-axis, and we could also never pass through. So you could have 1, 2, or no roots or zeros, okay? So the first example we're going to work on is by graphing. Now, here is the downfall of graphing, okay? So for example, I'm going to give you this first equation that we have, okay? And I gave it to you as y. I could also give it to you as f of x. And I want you to think about when you see this, though, as a problem, the whole part where we would put y in is because on the x-axis, y is always 0. Okay? So here's the problem with this, okay? If we're going to do this by graphing, it needs to be pretty accurate. If it's a fractional amount, we're going to have some problems. So here's the problem I have with this. If we're going to do this by graphing, and we're just going to find the zeros, then I am going to show you how to put it in on your graphing calculator and see if it crosses the x-axis. So where it says y equals, that's where you can, if you see a 0, that's what you can assume. So I want to put in x squared minus x minus 6, okay? And then I want to graph it. Oh, well, this graph is, well, it does look like it crosses. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it looks like my number. Oh, right there. Did you see it? Okay, so it looks like it crosses at x is to a -2 and x is equal to 3. Well, how can we double check that? Well, let's go to the table. And wherever it says x is equal to 0, then we got it. So -2, can you see that? -2, and then down here at 3, 0. Okay, well, there's my two solutions. Very good. So the reason I'm telling you this, and I don't mind telling you to actually do it on the calculator, is because when I figured out the axis of symmetry for this, the axis of symmetry ended up being 1/2. And the minimum, because this points up, ended up being like -6.25. Well, that's fine and dandy, and that's correct, but that doesn't, there was no way I was going to get that accurately from that, okay? So here's another example, okay? Let's try this one. So -2x squared minus 2 equals 4x. Okay, notice there's no y here. So here's what I want to do. I want to move everything to one side. Okay, so I think I'll move since this is negative, I think I'll move everything over here. So I'm going to add 2x squared and I'm going to add 2. So I get, 0 equals 2x squared plus 4x plus 2. Okay, you could think about that as a y. All right, let's put this in on our calculators, okay? So let's go back to this. Let's clear. So 2x squared plus, whoops, I forgot the 2 part. 2x, okay, plus 4x plus 2, okay, and let's graph. Oh, looks like it just sits right there. Looks like it just sits on the x-axis. Well, let's double check on the table. Oh yeah, -1, 0. So it just sits at negative 1, 0 and points up. So my solution is a -1. Now, what would happen if you plug that into there? If you wanted to check it, let me show you how it would give you that. So 2, -1 squared plus 4 times a -1 plus 2. And I get 0. So that's one way, okay? That's not my preferred way of doing that because, again, if it ends up not being nice and neat, you're kind of, ooh, that is a cool marker, but not cool to read. All right, so B is going to be solving these by, so this is part of the algebraic part, solving algebraically. And this is going to be square roots. So there's going to be a couple ways to solve these algebraically. Okay? So let me give you an example. 4x squared minus 31 equals 49. So since we're talking about square roots, we're going to use the square root property. And if there's a square root and there's no other x involved, so notice that doesn't look like this. There's no other x. In fact, if I wanted to highlight this x, I would only highlight it in one spot. Let's solve for x, okay? So let's get rid of 31 first. So 4x squared equals 80. Divide by 4. X squared is equal to, is that 20? Okay. And I guess part of what we're going to do with square roots is I'm going to have you go ahead and give me the actual square root for that. Sometimes we leave them as the square root of 20, but we're not going to worry about breaking them down. So square root each side, okay? X is equal to plus and minus because square root, 2 negatives make a positive and 2 positives make a positive. So take square root 20, round to 2 decimal places. So that'd be 4.47. That's where it crosses the x-axis. Okay. Let's try another one like that. Okay. Let's do 3x squared plus 9 equals 0. All right, well, let's get this all by itself. Okay, so minus 9, 3x squared equals -9 divided by 3. X squared is equal to a -3 square root both sides, right? So square root of a -3, oh, wait a minute, I can't square root negative numbers. So this is no real solutions. Doesn't work. All right, last one. All right. Notice with the square roots is on the inside, okay? Or the x is on the inside. So think about if you were to onion this, you have to start from the outside, so we need to get rid of 2/5. Well, what's 5 divided by 2/5? Let me show you how I would put that. 5 divided by parentheses 2/5 is 12.5. All right. I would get rid of the squared by square rooting. That's the opposite. All right, well, what do I get when I square root 12.5? I get 3.54 plus and minus. Okay, I'm still not done. I still subtract 3. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, one of these needs to be positive, minus 3. And one of these need to be negative, minus 3. So this one ends up being 0.54. This one ends up being negative 6.54. Okay, and both would be correct. Okay, questions on that? So there are going to be a couple more ways that we can do this. The other way will be factoring, but I want to make sure that we have these this way and this way tackled before we go through factoring 101. Okay, thanks.